Well, the House of Representatives yesterday voted to end all U.S. military assistance for Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen. We're going to get to the significance of that in just a moment. But first, the unexpected provision added to it. A last-minute motion from Republicans to formally condemn anti-Semitism and, quote, all attempts to delegitimize and deny Israel's right to exist. The language was unrelated to the Yemen resolution, and many saw it as the Republicans' response to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's tweets with anti-Semitic stereotypes, for which she has since apologized. The motion passed 424-0. About the motion, GQ magazine's Julia Yaffe tweeted this: really wish this happened back in 2016 when the president's supporters were sending death threats to Jewish reporters, or when Trump told the Republican Jewish coalition, I don't want your money, or when he lied about tweeting a Star of David plastered over money, or when House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy tweeted an anti-Semitic tweet implying prominent Jews were buying the midterm elections. Or, Julia finished, when their nominee made this Protocols of the Elders of Zion Light closing ad of his presidential campaign. The ad was criticized for using anti-Semitic tropes alongside images of prominent Jews like George Soros and Janet Yellen. Andrea Mitchell asked Vice President Mike Pence about the hypocrisy while she was in Warsaw with him yesterday. Take a look.
It's important that the leaders in the Congress take a firm stand against anti-Semitism rhetoric, and I think it requires consequences in this case.
And what the president said about banning all Muslims in 2015?
Well, look, the president's instituted a travel ban for the security of the United States of America.
House Speaker Nancy. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, the hypocrisy of the Republicans is actually it is beyond breathtaking. Yeah. We can do this in sequential order. In early December 2015, Donald Trump talked about a Muslim ban, banning over 1.5 billion people from entering this country because of the God they worship. Pure bigotry, unconstitutional, just a rank violation of the First Amendment. Then he talked about a Muslim registry. Republicans said nothing. Then he claimed that he didn't know who David Duke was or who the Ku Klux Klan were or what they did on the Sunday before Super Tuesday. Republicans said nothing. Then he attacked an Indiana judge born in America because his parents were born in Mexico. And he actually said that that American judge couldn't be fair and do his job fairly because there was Hispanic blood in him. Republicans said nothing. Then he starts putting Star of Davids over dollars and Hillary Clinton's image. Republicans say nothing. Kevin McCarthy suggesting that Jews are buying the midterm elections by putting up pictures of George Soros. Then during the caravans, Republican congressmen saying that Jews like George Soros were funding the caravan in hopes of stirring up their base. The anti-Semitism, I mean, I haven't even touched, Mika, on Charlottesville. There are so many examples of how this Republican majority in the House of Representatives and this Republican president have used racism and bigotry. And of course, the original sin was Donald Trump's birtherism. And yet they shamelessly attack one horrible anti-Semitic tweet, which should be condemned, but they are the last people to throw stones because they don't live in a glass house. They live in a glass tower that has the words Trump etched in crystal all over it.
Fake gold.
Because the racism and the bigotry, 24-karat fake gold. The racism and the bigotry that they've shown over the past few years and they've put up with, I guess, best way to, if you want to just sort of boil it down, Mickey, you just look how you had Paul Ryan calling Donald Trump a racist, and a couple days later, Paul Ryan endorsing Donald Trump, which is why what I said off the top is so critical. America cannot afford for these Democrats to blow their opportunity to return sanity to Washington, D.C. And we're going to
totally
have
agree.
Claire McCaskill on at 7 o'clock, and she'll follow up on.
She's warned about that Democratic overreach, but you know, to sort of put a period on what you're saying, if you're a leader and you don't stand up to it, then how are you not a part of it? So more on that tweet from House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy that Julia referenced. Back in October, just before the midterms, McCarthy tweeted, quote, "We cannot allow Soros, Steyer, and Bloomberg to buy this election." The word buy in all caps. And here's what the congressman said about that yesterday.
You put out a tweet about 3 billionaires trying to buy the midterms. What did you mean by that?
Well, that had nothing to do about faith. That was about Republicans versus Democrats. Michael Bloomberg put in $54 million into the campaign just in the last couple weeks in 24 districts. All I was pointing out was money that Republicans and Democrats were spending to defeat one another.
The tweet,
the billionaires, he picked out 3 Jews.
right.
He said that tweet. Let's put the tweet back up again. I mean, the tweet is saying, with a picture of George Soros, an ominous-looking picture of George Soros, Kevin McCarthy said, "Don't let 3 Jews buy the election." Could we have a House resolution condemning that? Could we have a Senate resolution condemning that tweet? That now the person running the Republican Party in the House of Representatives put out a tweet, "Don't let Jews buy the midterm election," because that's what he said.
And it's beyond hypocrisy on a whole new level, driven by hate. Heidi, the tweet that McCarthy deleted the next day, so he must have finally realized something was wrong with it, came as Tom Steyer, George Soros, and other prominent Democrats were being targeted by pipe bombs. Remember that? The San Francisco Chronicle asked McCarthy's spokesman why it was deleted, if the congressman believed there was nothing wrong, and the paper was directed to a statement issued at the time referencing the sensitivity of the political climate, AKA they actually did think it was wrong and took it down, but whatever. Heidi, you spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill. You talked to these Republicans off camera, off the record. How do they bring this together? You know, the fact that they will be, you know, staunchly defensive about a tweet by a Democratic congresswoman and yet stand by this president's racism.
Well, they don't, is the answer. And the parallel here is striking because it's not just anti-Semitic trope, but it's the exact same anti-Semitic trope in terms of tying Jews to money, in terms of the tweet that the president himself put out with the Star of David and Clinton sitting atop a pile of cash. But if you talk to members of Congress right now, Democrats, they say the big difference here is that Representative Omar actually apologized and apologized immediately for this. But this should be a red light to some of these freshman Democrats, frankly, because this is the second time in almost as many weeks that we've seen one of them be piled on for misstatements or controversial statements, and that they now, instead of Nancy Pelosi, are going to be the bullseye for the Republicans who really want to use some of these cultural issues to stir up their base. And this will not be the last time unless some of these members realize that they are now serving in Congress, and they need to be careful of what they put out into social media, into the Twitter sphere, because that will be used against them, and it will be used against their entire party. The base doesn't frankly care. I don't know how aware they are of the hypocrisy and the statements that have come from those on their side of the aisle, but it can be used to great effect against the Democrats.
And Jeremy Bash, to close this out, let's talk about the bill this was actually attached to, which was to end all U.S. military assistance for Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen. What are the implications of that?
Well, this was a rebuke, Mika, of the way that Saudi Arabia and the UAE have waged war in Yemen against the Houthi rebels. It's designed to withdraw American military support, including aerial refueling from those operations. This is similar to the bipartisan measure passed by the Senate. Of course, the president will veto it, but it shows you how aggressive the new House Democratic majority is going to be in trying to rein in what they see as massive overreach by the Trump foreign policy.
All right, Jeremy Bash, thank you very much for being on this morning. And still ahead on Morning Joe, the very latest in the push for a border compromise with just Hours left before another government shutdown. What the president and his shadow counselors on TV are saying about it. Plus, it's a headline that caught plenty of attention. Smaller tax refunds surprised those expecting more relief. Steve Ratner breaks down the bottom line for many Americans following the Republicans' tax reform. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.